Hello and welcome to those who are watching. So today we are going to present our final project for AP Human History, which is gentrification of Hutongs in Beijing. As we know, Hutongs are some of the most important features and residences for people in inner Beijing cities. Dating back to 13th century, where China was still ruled by Mongolians, and even before Christopher Columbus discovered Americas, Hutongs had already shaped the chessboard grid and the basic cultural landscape of Beijing. At that time, people in Beijing are like pawns on the chessboard, guarding the emperor living in the Forbidden City. Traditionally, northern Hutong's neighborhoods are generally filled with richer residents, and this had not been altered for centuries. However, in the recent 2 decades, multiple factors have contributed to the gentrification of Hutongs and the loss of traditional Hutong culture.
Here I'm going to introduce the geographical distribution of this issue. First of all, where? It occurs in Hutong areas in Xicheng and Dongcheng district of Beijing. Specifically in Xicheng district, that around famous primary schools, for example, the Leifeng Primary School around Gulou. And second of all, why? It happens because the social pull factor, specifically the school district housing policy, which means the school-age children would go to the primary school that corresponds to their school district in which the house they purchase is located in. And this policy only exists in Xicheng district now. So this policy attracts the young parents to pay huge money to migrate into this area and thus force the native residents to move out from the Hutongs, which eventually caused the loss of Hutong culture.
In addition to understanding why and where, as a geographist, we also have to know the situation factors that cause the gentrification of Hutong areas. First situation factor is that there are famous schools in this area that attract the crazy parents to move there in order to provide the best quality of education to their kids. This factor actually was also discussed by Raul in the previous slide. But what the point I want to point out is that the attraction of the crazy parents symbolize the location of middle-class people into the Hutong areas. As a result, the lower middle class and lower income people, the natives, Lao Beijing, were relocated out of these areas. And this was the demographic prerequisite of gentrification in Hutong areas. The second situation factor is the proximity to the financial street and other upper middle class clusters. As we see, the map shows that the Jinrongjie and Nanbanbi Hutong, Daxi Hutong, are located in the same cluster. In this way, the Xicheng district government requires these Hutongs to be renovated in order to create a consistent lifestyle for the employees and employers in those financial street corporations.
At the same time, gentrification is also occurring in the southern part of Xicheng district, which is formerly known as Xuanwu district. It was caused by the attempt to remove illegal structure that have caused the increased homogeneity of Hutongs, especially in tourist attractions in eastern Xuanwu district, for example, Liulichang, Dashilar, and even to the Forbidden City. Even though the school district is not as good as that of the northern part of Xicheng district. And in terms of the industries, like retail industries such as fast food chains and boutique shops have expanded to the Hutong because of their proximity to the downtown, which would attract more tourists.
Both of the factors we discussed before, it is the educational and economic factors, in addition to the outdated housing and traffic problems, have become a major issue for local residents, and hutongs are seemingly developing toward the wrong direction. In the last November, our group conducted interviews in Hutong nearby Gulou, Nanluoguxiang, and Guangwai, in which top primary schools such as Beijing No. 2 Experimental Primary School and top tourist attractions are located in. During the interview, the most prosperous areas that we witnessed were extracurricular classes that are opened in hutongs, and almost all Hutong residents below 40 years old are relatively new as they moved there in the past 5 years for their children's better education quality. And most of them would admit that moving to hutongs have sacrificed their life quality. In addition, since the commercials in Hutong are getting increasingly homogeneous, it has attracted more people from outside of Beijing to move into hutongs.
For most important point is that skyrocketing housing prices caused the living in hutongs. In terms of the effects of the gentrification in Hutong, there are also a couple of things that I would like to mention here. First of all, the skyrocketing housing price and living cost in Hutongs, especially those nearing top school districts, have pulled more middle to higher class parents to move there and push the older residents with lower income to move out for better life quality. And the departing old residents to cheaper places elsewhere have contributed to the loss of traditional Hutong phenomenon, such as food vendors, as well as the decline in traditional leisure activities, such as kongzhu, petting birds, and holding cricket fights. And the vendors with cars or tricycles, which most Hutong natives grew up with, are now gone because the city management have disallowed them to continue. In addition, while most Hutong natives are aging, while their life quality in Hutongs have not been improved for decades, and the problem of toilets and electricity still cannot be solved. Meanwhile, since Hutong residences are now surrounded by more boutique shops with extremely high rentals, it is hard for the locals to find a place to buy cheap basic utilities. During our interview last year, all the residents had reached the consensus that the weird Tibetan totems and deep-fried squids sold in the hutongs are completely non-existent 10 years ago during the vendors' time. Also, in some places, outdated infrastructure are even posting noise and dangers to people who reside there. And the open structure of siheyuans in Hutong have made trespassing a commonplace, as many locals complain that their foreign tourists go into the yards and take photos without permission every other day.
The government has already been taking actions on ensuring the life quality of older Hutong residents and lowering the price of housing near to top school districts. However, the outcomes of the effort have been limited at best. In the past 2 or 3 years, the government is promoting educational equality, and housing in good school districts no longer guarantees a child's position at a top school, and the value of the school district houses in Hutongs have therefore diminished. It is also reported that the government has funded renovation in Hutong houses. However, when we visited Hutong near Gulou and Xidan last year, we found that most renovations are focused on the outer appearance rather than basic infrastructure, so the life quality of Hutong residents have barely improved. We are also suspicious that the policy of the government is intended to further attract tourism. Most importantly, while the government is trying to move residents away from hutongs, the compensation is not even near satisfactory. During the process of our interview, almost all residents have expressed the will to leave hutong for lower cost and better life quality if the term offered by the government are reasonable. And even the outsiders who rent houses in hutong for businesses are claiming that they're willing to move to places outside of Beijing if there's better opportunity. However, the compensation offered by the government would either relocate them outside of 5th or even 6th ring of Beijing, which would essentially cut off their ties with inner city given the age of the locals. Or they would be offered money that would not suffice half of the price of housing in a more convenient location. Also, due to the process of removing residents have been partially outsourced to private companies, some residents are suspicious if any corruption is present. So here are the proposed solutions of mine which would help solve the problem caused by the current policies. First, the government should post better terms of compensation and complete the control over the relocation of the older hutong residents, so that no corruptions would be possible to present. And also, it would be great for the government to subsidize local artists, such as Peking opera performance or traditional painters, etc., to relocate to hutong so that the traditional cultures in hutong can be preserved. It is also similar to the concept of ecotourism. In ecotourism, people would have a great tourist appearance while still preserving the nature, the beauty of the nature. And in this case, the tourists are still having fun inside of hutongs, while the traditional culture is also preserved. Third, since the basic utilities in the hutongs have been pretty much very expensive and more expensive than almost everywhere else in Beijing, I think that government should manage to control the price level so that it will be more convenient for residents who are staying at hutong. And fourth, now last but not least, the government should provide more public transit such as buses to reduce traffic jam in the area and make the short distance travel for local residents more convenient.
For collecting the public opinions, we developed a survey which includes 5 quantitative questions. The first question is about the participant identity that could probably affect the result. So we have native Beijingers, non-native Beijingers who grew up in Beijing, and non-native Beijingers who grew up outside of Beijing. The second and third questions are related to the time of the first and last visits of the participants. The range of the time varies from 2000 to 2020, apart from those who haven't visited yet.
And after our survey, we have found that a surprising high percentage of residents who take the survey haven't even been to hutong anymore. And almost half of the people who took the survey think that there have been no change at all on hutong in the recent decades. And also, even though it is reflected by hutong residents that the changes made in hutong have been pretty much negative, the majority of people who took the survey, 6 out of 11, thought that the change in hutong have brought them positive experiences when traveling there, which means that people who take the survey and live outside of hutong are pretty much indifferent about what has changed in hutong and what they would experience in hutong.
In addition to the quantitative survey, we also did a qualitative interview with Ms. Lin Yan, our Chinese geography teacher at BNDS. We asked him 3 in-depth questions. Though Ms. Lin Yan was not a Beijing native, she provided us a lot of insightful information regarding the gentrification in Hutong areas. The first question is that, when was the last time you went to Hutong? When was the first time? And what differences did you see between the 2 visits? Ms. Lin Yan told us the first visit was in 1997. The last visit was just last year. And the scene in 1997 in Hutong areas was poor residential regions. And no one at that time even thought of commercialization. And no one expected that gentrification was going to happen in Hutong areas in the next few decades. The scene in her last visit was a hot spot of tourism. Starbucks and Japanese restaurants emerged side the streets in Hutong areas. Besides, the fusion of Western and Eastern cultures emerged as well. She was totally surprised by the change happened in the 2 decades, and she told us, though she was not a Beijing native, she was really touched by the change experienced in the 20 years living in Beijing. Our second question is that, to what extent do you see the Hutong culture being lost as a result of commercialization and demographic changes? Ms. Lin Yan told us the change is inevitable, and the complete preservation of Hutong culture is impossible as well. We was emotionally shocked by her answer. But next, she also told us, to her, it was totally acceptable that the complete preservation of Hutong culture would be impossible. She analyzed a critical change of Hutong's role for us. The first step was a shift from residential areas to commercial areas in Hutong areas. As a result of the shift, the housing price and living cost became unaffordable for those lower income people. And subsequently, the lower income people, predominantly those native Beijingers, were displaced out of the Hutong areas. At the same time, the rich businessmen was moved into the Hutong areas simultaneously. Then the disintegration of regional neighborhood cultures happened in Hutong areas, and simultaneously, again, the construction of new economic order happened in Hutong residents. Our last question was that, according to our research, gentrification of Hutong leads to the improvement of urban appearance, attracts more tourists, and boosts GDP, but also significantly drive up the housing prices and leads to the loss of traditional culture and leisure practices. We asked her about how she viewed this trade-off. Does she think that gentrification overall makes Hutong community better? To our surprise, as a geography teacher, she was still confused about this issue. She told us it was a quite complex issue, and even she could not give us a final fixed answer. But she also told us, from her point of view, the HuG controversy has been cooled down in recent years. And the incredibly high housing prices is not that unreasonable as she has seen. Because she projects us a big question. How could we expect a 1-story building cost the same as a 30-story building? It's true. In Hutong areas, where the population was densely located in those residential areas, people have to live in a 四合院 or something with only 1 story. However, most of the displaced newcomer Beijinger now live in the external areas outside of Hutong, where multiple story buildings are available. For our group, this final project is more than a 1-month final project. We've been focusing on the issue of gentrification in Hutong for almost half a year. And we got a lot of final thoughts that we want to convey to you guys. The first thought is that in recent years, with the joint efforts of all walks of life, Beijing's progress and development in all aspects, especially economic, human local coordination, and disease relief in large cities are obvious to all. Such rapid development and changes in urban functions have made even a small part of old Beijing people find it difficult to adapt. Among them, the influx of foreigners is one of the most important factors that changed the life of Beijing and old Beijing lifestyle. As a metropolis, Beijing's rich industries provide a large number of jobs and also requires a lot of manpower labor to maintain the operation of these industries. It is inevitable to attract migrants to make up those blank jobs. And while Beijing has become increasingly diverse, Beijing's once-in-a-lifetime appearance should definitely be gone. And it has forever become memory of many old Beijing Hutong residents. In our interview we did in last November, an old lady said that recently the Hutong has been renovated. We can still get back a little bit of Beijing's feelings. But what about the other people? It has become a high-rise building and the subway station. The feeling of hometown was once lost. As the capital of the country, Beijing shoulders more missions and heavy responsibilities. The change of her face is the mark of prosperity and development. But to those native Hutong residents, they are no longer familiar with the Hutong they see right now. Is this kind of change on the right track? We don't have a final answer. We should leave it to history to witness, the old lady in our interview told us. Although people are getting older and older now, life is better at least. And sometimes I don't really think about this issue that much.
But all in all, we still need to think that as the cultural center, does Beijing really carry forward the world culture, the traditional Chinese culture, or the local Hutong culture? Our ID card starts with 110, but we are not real Beijingers. We have integrated and changed Beijing, but we still cannot fully represent Beijing. So, what is Beijing? Is it a capital? A large institution of science and education? An open window for China to look out to the world? A place where young people drifted to pursue their dreams? Or the hometown of old Beijingers?
So, as a citizen of this beloved city, it is the responsibility for all of us to think about it. What is Beijing? Should we embrace all the gentrification and all the inevitable changes that would occur in Beijing, or should we still have to look back to our older traditions, to the hometown of many old people before it may be gone for good? So that's it for our presentation. So here are our citations and bibliography. So please feel free to pause the video and check out what we cited. Thank you for watching for this long, and thank you for staying us with this long 20 minutes. Thank you.